Welcome into a special crossover episode between the two teams that should be competing once again for the Central Division. Special crossover episode of Locked On Avalanche and Locked On Stars. Lot to talk about. Let's get to it.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, the intro said Locked On Avalanche, but this is a crossover episode of Locked On Avalanche and Locked On Stars. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. From Locked On Avalanche, I am Chris Maselli, and with me is my co-host, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. And joining us from Locked On Stars is the one and only Joey Erickson. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a pleasure to be on with you boys. I had to catch up with Chris for the first time when we met in the playoffs, but I haven't been with Kyle yet, so I'm interested to see how this goes.
It's going to be horrible.
Prepare downhill. All downhill from here.
Perfect.
Yeah, man. I mean, technically, the season is here. But for us, the real season starts because the Avalanche will play on Wednesday, which is the day that this is coming out. Stars are playing Thursday, right? Against Nashville.
Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to that one, and a new look Nashville team, of course, with Marchessault and Stamkos, and the old backup goaltender from the Stars is there now with Scott Wedgwood. So I'm really intrigued, and I'm hoping that rivalry kind of reignites. You know, we had the playoff series a few years ago, and then the Winter Classic, of course. And now that Nashville's got some new characters in there, maybe it'll bring back some life to the season series.
And it's in Nashville too.
Correct. Bridgestone.
So I know it's just game one, but with the new team that they got, game ones, the first home game is always big for whatever the home team is. Like, just for game one, what do you feel like? Will it just get those first few shifts over and it's just business as usual, or what's the vibe going into game one in Nashville with that crowd and that new team?
Yeah, I think the first period will have a lot of life probably, and then the game will just settle down and it will be hockey once again. And you have to remember too, Matt Duchene's going back, and he's already sort of had his revenge tour against Nashville, but that will certainly bring a little something to the matchup. And hopefully I don't have to hear Tim McGraw too much on Thursday night, because that means Nashville's going to be rolling. But you have to feel good. If you're a Stars fan, Maverick Bourque may not be able to go, so we're keeping an eye on that. Looks like Wyatt Johnston and Jason Robertson should be good. So the Stars should be pretty full strength, besides maybe one guy for Thursday night. But I think it'll be I think the first 20 minutes will be something that crowd's going to have to be electrified with just all the new shiny toys. So to speak.
And it's got to help that half the league is Matt Duchene revenge tour. So
I was going to say all his exes live outside of Texas.
It's crazy. But no, I was curious about the Stars, because Robo didn't play all preseason. Like, what are you trying to establish? Like, honestly, in that first 10, because the Avs, they have the two contracts that are bouncing around with Landeskog and Nichushkin. You don't know if they're going to come back, return. And we always talk like first 10, first 20, first 30. What's the ideal start for the Dallas Stars in that first 10? What are they trying to prove right now?
Yeah, I think they're just trying to prove that there's an attitude, I think, and an expectation to win a Stanley Cup now. And that necessarily wasn't the motto for a lot of years. And I think they just want to kind of get on the horse and play Dallas Stars hockey, and I guess Pete DeBoer hockey, right? Which is, puck possession, kill plays in the defensive zone, and play a ton of offense. And with Robertson, I don't have a ton of concerns that he's not been in camp. The last time he missed camp was he was holding out for a contract, and then he had 109 points. So I don't know if there's much cause for concern for him, just because the type of style he plays, he's a goal scorer. He's going to finish, and I think he's just so good at it. I don't think missing camp's going to hurt him all that much, but I think, that first 10 minutes will be big, and just trying to prove that once again, like, they're going to be a team that's that's going to be reckoned with for at least this season and for the future with all their young guys coming in. So I think if they establish that, they're going to be in good shape. And it's even weird talking about the Stars in this manner where it's just like they kind of have this swagger and I don't want to say cockiness, holding their heads where it's like, yeah, like we are one of the best teams in the NHL and it's okay to say that. And we're here to prove it like Colorado's been the last few years, but now it's about like, it's time to win a cup, right? It's time to get over that hump after 2 Western Conference Finals appearances. And hopefully this is the year to do it.
I mean, I have cup or bust over there on the rundown, but you can talk about that now. And it's kind of in a similar situation that the Avalanche were in prior to when they finally got over that hump and won it. For you guys, you've been in the conference finals for the past years. The Avs couldn't get out of the second round. And then once they finally, got over that hump, they eventually obviously went on to win the cup. But is it that same kind of mentality? Like, does Dallas and do Dallas fans just want to get the regular season over with? Is this just going to be like a slog of a regular? You have a good team. You're going to the playoffs. And because we haven't got past where we've gotten the past couple of years, that's where the focus is right now. You know what I mean?
I think you hit the nail on the head. And at least that's where I'm at. And maybe that's annoying to listeners over the summer because I feel like I'm always talking about things with the mindset of the playoffs. Like I'm already thinking about the playoffs. Like, okay, the Stars need to go out and add a defenseman, a Chris Tanev type acquisition to really solidify this decor so they can be true contenders in the Western Conference or a Stanley Cup. I always am looking at the Stars through that lens, and that can be frustrating, but I'm sure a lot of Stars fans subscribe to that as well. They just want to see what happens when April comes around. And I'm really intrigued to see where Dallas sort of, I guess, slots in the regular season, right? It's just at this point, it's about seeding. Like what seed are you going to get? Hopefully you don't run into a Vegas team that was an 8 seed last season and they took a big chunk out of you in that first round, right? You got to get a few things to go your way. I mean, every Stanley Cup team gets some bounces and they get lucky with some injuries, and sometimes you get some lucky series. And Dallas, unfortunately, had to take on an Avs team that was, loaded for the most part, of course, with Landeskog out and Nichushkin. That was a huge blow. If Nichushkin's there, I mean, it probably goes 7 games. Maybe Dallas doesn't even make the Western Conference Final, to be honest. That's how dominant Val was in those first couple of games. So if you get, I think it's just all about the type of matchups and hopefully they get some bounces. But I think you're exactly right, Chris. Just like, can we get through the 82 games and let's see if we can go win this thing. Yeah.
And what are we expecting out of Logan Stankoven Part 2? Are we getting some more consistency and some more seasoning? Because that was a great story going into last year, and I'm curious on what we're looking at on the next round.
Yeah, Stankoven is a player, and I think what he's going to be really impactful at for the Stars is, even if he's not scoring, he's going to make a lot of things happen. I've sort of have named him like the player you would just absolutely hate to play against, and not because he's dirty. He's not a Brad Marchand type, but he's small and he just buzzes around out there. I call him a little water bug, and he just goes around and he's just like forechecking like hell and making defensemen just hate their lives because he's just all over the place. And you watch him in the preseason, and this guy does not need to fight for a job. And he's back checking a full 150 feet from his own offensive zone and picking a puck up and taking it off somebody's stick. And I'm just like, what is this guy doing? Like you almost have to, I've also said he's like that player that used to play with, or that teammate used to have, where it's just like, he's always going 120%. So you may be taking it easy, got a game tomorrow, want to, give yourself a rest. And this guy's just going full force, and he's not going to not let anything get past him. And it's just like, you hate to play against him, but it's great to have on your team. And I think he's going to score a ton this year. I really do. I think we're going to get a big tick in production. Because he did kind of fall off in that rookie season. I think he gets to play with Jamie Benn again, and once Maverick Bourque is healthy, those two, of course, they just completely tore up the AHL last season. Yeah. So I think you're going to see a bit more consistency, as you mentioned, Kyle, in his offensive game this season. Now that he has 24 games under his belt, I think you're going to look at a Calder finalist. I don't know if he wins it with Celebrini, kind of the guy to almost I guess it's his to lose, so to speak. But I think he's going to be up there as a Calder finalist. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
I think the Avalanche are looking at Dallas and like, we want to replicate that with the youth movement. Like the young guys that you've put in just have seemed to have been aces. And the Avs, they're going that route to start the season. They have likely 4 guys that they're going to start with Callum Ritchie and Malinsky, Ivan and Kovalenko. And, some of it's forced because of the Landeskog, Nichushkin, and Lehkonen is out too to start the season. So I think, I'm not saying they're just modeling themselves after the Stars. Like I said, they kind of didn't really have a choice in the matter. But Kyle and I were talking about this, past Avalanche teams would have just relied on veterans and just get us through. But they're going a little bit younger, and it's kind of exciting to. And how is it for you? Is it's kind of like similar last year, kind of getting these fresh faces that worked out, and it's like, this is exactly what we wanted.
Yeah. It's so important too, right? Because during the Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin era, right, which is kind of almost coming to an end right now. I think this is what will really be the last season. Jamie Benn's going to stick around. General manager Jim Mittlelstadt, if he's the GM, he's going to be a Dallas Star. So, I mean, we can pretty much book it that he's going to stick around, but you do have this influx in talent, but it gives some of your veterans some longer longevity, right? And of course, the Avs have already got their Stanley Cup with McKinnon and Rantanen and Makar, but you get this influx of young talent, and now it opens your window again. And unfortunately, Dallas did it sort of late with Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin, but I guess now or never is sort of the mantra there. But there was a really important shift in the way Dallas started thinking about the way they drafted. And there was an article put out over the summer from The Athletic, and general manager Jim Nill came out and said, he's like, after that 16-17 season, because I mean, Dallas during most of the Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin era was just mediocre hockey, right? They were just kind of hovering over 500, and maybe they snuck in, and, a lot of teams subscribe to, well, let's just get in and see. But that's not a great way to go about it. And they changed their mindset in drafting too, over skill, drafting skill over size. And now you see Maverick Bourque, and now you see Logan Stankoven. Of course, they sort of lucked into getting Miro Heiskanen with a 3rd pick, but he hit, obviously. You traded up to get Jake Ottinger, and now all of those players have hit. And you have another one in Liam Bichsel, who is this giant guy that I can move the puck, and he's going to start in the AHL, but man, he looks like he's going to hit at 18th overall, and he's got a good foundation. I just get giddy thinking about it. I'm like, oh, once Bichsel comes up, I mean, this is a team that's loaded now.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
Was it literally just pick the best player available? Or was it more need or a combination of the two? Like, what was the mindset of drafting?
I think the Stars really subscribe to who their guy is. They don't go away from that. And I think we saw that in this past draft with Emil Hemming. EJ Emery was there, of course. And the Dallas needs right shot defensemen, right? I mean, everybody needs right shot defensemen in a lot of ways, but Dallas, that would have been, I guess, best player available or need, but they stuck with their gut and they went with Emil Hemming, who's another Finnish guy. I'm sure they had their due diligence with Jari Lehtonen, a former, Stars legend. I think they just kind of subscribe to that, or it's just like, this is our guy and we're going to stick with him no matter what really happens. And, Wyatt Johnston was a pick that COVID was weird for a lot of teams. And I mean, I think Johnston played 7 games or something like that. But Dallas just liked him. There was a scout that loved him, and they took him, and that's obviously paid out. And I think he's going to be the next superstar here in Dallas. I think he's going to be that type of caliber player. And I would say it's just more of just kind of sticking with your gut. It's not necessarily best player need. It's just Stankoven in a second round, he's a smaller guy, and a lot of teams probably were turned off by that, because that's just, it's GMs find it hard to, not want to give the big 6'6" guy just all the money a lot of times. And you see it in free agency, a lot, those big guys get paid. And then, but I think Dallas is just sticking with their gut, and it's obviously paid off. So good stuff.
I wish my gut was right that many times in a row. So, all right, let's get a break in. A couple more questions for you, and then I'm sure you have some questions for us for the Avs going into next year. We'll get to all that coming up next. All right, let's hear it from Gametime and the Gametime app. It has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. And with Gametime Picks, it filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. There's other things that we love about the Gametime app as well. Of course, you have the Gametime Picks, the all-in pricing. You can toggle the feature on, and it shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. I guess if you're one of those people that like surprise fees, don't toggle that on. But most people want to know what they're looking at is the final price, and you can toggle that feature on. You got your seat views, your lowest price guarantee, or they will credit you 110% of the difference. And the Gametime ticket coverage, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime and download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. So again, create the account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it, Kyle?
It's game time.
Stop doing that. I'll fill you in later on, Joey.
I'm sure Chris loves it every time you do that, Kyle.
Yeah, there's an added.
I think I'm starting to see the dynamic now.
there's an added feature which he's incorporated to that, and I'll let you know later. Anyway, all right. So yeah, you got the Avalanche and the Stars. I think there's still the two horses at the top of this division. Mm-hmm. We'll let the Predators earn their keep before we invite them into this party that we've been kind of it's just been the two of us for a few years now. So we'll see. But as far as Dallas goes, in my opinion, they're one of the most well-rounded teams in the league. They have very few weaknesses, in my opinion. So when I ask you this, like, where is the weakness? I don't mean like what are they terrible at? Because I don't think they're terrible at anything. Just what's the one little thing that teams could exploit just to maybe get an upper hand on them? Because they're going to be a tough out game in and game out this year.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a great question and something I've really pondered over the last few weeks because obviously July 1st in free agency, it wasn't what a lot of Stars fans wanted, right? And getting Matt Dumba and Ilya Lyubushkin. But the more I think about it and I take a more bird's eye view look at really the entire West and even the Central, the weakness you would point out is the defense, right? And Matt Dumba and Ilya Lyubushkin, which are really just slotting into your top four. Lyubushkin's just played over 17 minutes is the most he's ever played in his career a night. And how is that going to work out? Dumba, of course, has not looked the same like he was in Minnesota, but he has played over 20 minutes a night recently with Arizona, and you have to think he's going to get a little better with this situation here in Dallas because it's just a better environment. And if he plays alongside Miro Heiskanen, I think Miro is going to make him look good a lot more often than not. But when you really take a bird's eye view look at things, you have to think, well, like Colorado has a better defense, of course. I think Vegas you would put up there as a team that still has a very good back end. Nashville, I think you can make the argument. But Dallas still has Miro Heiskanen and Thomas Harley, who are, really, really nice pieces. And Lindell's been there forever. And I think Lindell's a very underrated player that I think in a lot of postseason series, teams kind of come out of and be like, yeah, that 23 guy's like pretty good. He's not flashy at all, but he's earned our respect in a lot of ways. The really, I think the big concern is Niels Lundqvist, who's like that sixth defenseman who, you remember that Colorado series was playing like 2 shifts a game until Petrovic finally came in. Can he finally establish himself as a player that has trust with the coaching staff? Because that's really where he's lacking is Pete DeBoer and his staff just have not trusted him enough to play. So one of my bold predictions is he plays 70 plus games with the Stars because the most he's played is 60. I don't even really see that happening. So that is the weakness, but it's not egregious, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they're falling off a cliff, but they will have some issues there and they're going to have to make up for that at some point throughout the season.
And I noticed there was a lack of confidence in the defensive pairings in preseason. There was like a lot of shifting and moving in the pairings. And it's something that showed me that there's not that confidence in what they have. With this Nashville game coming up, do you find them finding confidence in these pairings if it is a successful win against Nashville and this is what you commit to going forward? Or is there going to be like fluctuations in this defensive pairings throughout the year?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of experimentation. That seemed to sort of be the trend throughout the preseason, but I think they're going into it knowing what they're going to go with, which I think is a good sign and something that I wanted them to do. Because number one is you have to get Miro on his strong side, and we saw in the preseason it just opens up so much more for his game. And I know they tell us, well, we're not worried about it. Well, you should be, because it makes him a lot better of a player. It really does. And he's already one of the best defensemen in the world, but like you get him on that strong side, then he's on his forehand. He can do so much more. So he's going to play alongside Matt Dumba, I believe. That's going to be your top pair. And then your second pair will be Harley and Lyubushkin. So they have the lefty-righty matchups they wanted because they brought those two guys in to really get some continuity there. And then Lindell and Lundqvist. That's the pairing that I think is going to just get changed around a ton. And I think they may be what I guess I would say I'm going to be concerned about is they have a rough stretch here, let's say to open the season. Then they're going to want to go back to Harley and Heiskanen, which of course is a super duper pairing. Like those two are dominant together, but I would love for them to just let it marinate for a bit and see what they have out of it, because they are a really good team. I don't think they have to worry about, like an Edmonton situation where they were really putrid off the start, but they don't have Connor McDavid to kind of lift them through the the regular season. So I don't think they're worried about getting off to such a putrid start where they need to almost go back to what's comfortable. So I think it's a good point. Yeah, I don't know if they really know. And I think we're going to see a lot of experimentation throughout the year, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, but it really is nice to have continuity throughout a season. And they have that up front, right? And I think they're searching for that on the back end. And that's why they signed guys like Lyubushkin and Dumba for, 2 or 3 years. And yeah, you could certainly argue they overpaid for him, but I think they're like, this is the one spot on the team we've never been consistent in, at least the last 5 years. It's like, we're going to finally try to find that. And hopefully it works.
Yeah. Well, let's get our last break in here and we come back. I'm sure you have some questions and thoughts for us and in the Avalanche for coming up this season. So one more break, come back. And then I also want to get, because Kyle and I did our predictions on yesterday's episode. I don't know if you've done them for your show yet.
I did. So this is perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
So you can fill us in on what your predictions are. So we'll do that next. All right, let's hear from FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return over on FanDuel, which is, of course, America's #1 sports book. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game and you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com, where you can get started with $200 in bonus bets. Like I said, that is guaranteed when you place just $5 over at America's #1 sportsbook. Of course, that is FanDuel.com. All right, sir. So let's turn the tide here, and
Yes.
you can kind of throw some our way. I know the Avs, if my scrolling skills are still up to par, I think their first game that they play is late November, so after Thanksgiving. So,
Oh, wow.
and it's spaced out. It's not bad. It's spaced out. Nice.
Okay,
they don't just have all the games win 2-week period and they're done.
Yeah.
Hate that.
Yes.
So this could be a fun season. Who you see in the beginning of the year could be different by the end of the year. So
absolutely. Yeah. And when these two teams meet, it's usually fireworks in the regular season. There's always a lot of entertaining games.
Usually.
I think didn't we blow 2-3 goal leads against the
Avs,
Avs?
man.
And we tried to in the playoffs a few times as well.
Those were good games. Always good games, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess my first question, I want to ask you about Casey Mittlelstadt. I've always liked his game, and then he comes over from Buffalo. He comes into Colorado, and he's like, yeah, now this guy can play with people around him. Is he sort of like he kind of your number 2 center now, kind of rocking along? He's it's McKinnon, and then you got Mittlelstadt kind of running shot, because he's a really good player, and I think he gets to show that now in Colorado.
I hope so. I hope he is the 2C. They're giving him the keys.
Okay, yeah.
Avalanche fans, we've been here before, right, Kyle? With Alex Newhook, it's a different animal, though. Like it's not, Mittlelstadt is not Newhook, but yeah, the interesting thing with him is they haven't really given him a solid line to play with in the preseason and in training camp. It's just been kind of like a mix and match, because the guys that he's likely going to be playing with are not going to be playing right now with Val Nichushkin, maybe Gabe Landeskog, even Arturi Lehkonen. So those 3 guys, you can, interchange who's going to be on that line. He doesn't get to practice with them. So you're thinking it might be a really young line with him, Kovalenko, and probably Callum Ritchie to start your second line. But you're right, man. Like I'm expecting a lot from him this year. I just don't think, he's buried in Buffalo for a long time. And now this is how many guys have come to Colorado, and just with the culture, with the winning culture, and being around guys that just expect to win, just get more out of a guy. I'm sure, Kyle, you feel.
No, you're very excited to see what Mittlelstadt can do, especially with an off season and a training camp, and he can really work with the Avalanche. But like Chris mentioned, like they gave him a new deal. Like he's here. He's the 2C. But they gave him this promotion, in his office they're still putting up the walls and a door. Like he's moved in, he's got comfortable, but he doesn't know what everything looks like around him. And I don't think you're going to see 100% Casey Mittlelstadt till probably that first Dallas game.
Yeah.
Could be.
Wow. Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
It's gonna be odd. It's gonna be weird. It's almost like unfair to him, because it's like, hey, you're our guy. We haven't had a true 2C. You are anointed that guy. And oh, by the way, for the first maybe 1 or 2 months, we're just gonna mix and match a line for you. But I think that'll make him rise to the occasion. And if he can really kind of make this the second line, if it continues to be Kovalenko and Ritchie, if he can keep them and introduce them to the league and keep everybody above water, I mean, he's going to be a superstar in Avalanche land. To do that with less, or not, I mean, I want to say less, like they're not good players, but it's a tough start for him. But I'm interested to see where it goes.
Yeah. What is the latest on Landeskog? I feel like I haven't heard much from his side of things.
It's still you hear all the right things.
Okay, yeah,
coming out of him.
He's progressing.
Yeah, and you know what, man, and I believe it, because if they've always said if there's any other setbacks with this, like they really got to start back at square one. Maybe we're past that stage of starting all the way back from square one. When they said that was shortly after his surgery. And maybe like 6 months after his surgery. I think we're beyond if there's a setback, we got to go to the drawing board. But if there's a setback, it could be another month or 2. I don't know. I don't want to guess what it is, but maybe we're past the worst of it, I want to say. And they're saying all the right things of he's progressing nicely. What did he say, Kyle, sooner rather than later, of when he should return to action? I think Avs fans are kind of expecting a November return. And that would be kind of incredible, because you will likely, if that happens, you're getting Landeskog, Nichushkin, and Lehkonen all back in November.
Yeah.
That's
and then you're fully loaded. I am curious from an outside point of view, I guess, if you look at the Stars Avs postseason series, high in talent, of course, the Avs match up there. They have the better high in talent. I mean, with one of the top, I mean, really, they got 2 top 5 players in the game. I think you could really make that argument.
Sure.
Is possibly the weakness if these 2 teams met again in the postseason? Is it the depth up front? Is that where maybe Dallas had the advantage at? Is it goaltending? Because I think maybe it's Dallas had extra depth up front. That would be where I would say the Stars had the advantage. From your point of view, do you look at it a different way? Especially it's different when you're not fully loaded and some of the outside concerns that have happened. But
I could tell you if we're looking back at that playoff series and where the matchups went, the absence of Val Nichushkin in the middle of that series popped the balloon for the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah.
The production you were getting out of Nuke in the first 3 games or first 2 games, and especially off that Winnipeg series, was phenomenal. And especially off his track record and the Seattle exit the year prior, you were building confidence that Nuke was here to stay, and he's done everything. And the exit deflated that team. You could see it in the body language. You could see it in how that team reacted.
That game 4 was like just a complete no-show, unfortunately for them. Like, it was terrible news to get. Like, it was just like, oh yeah.
Just an hour before the game. An hour before the game. And they found out along with all the Avs fans, and you could feel just that dread and the disappointment. And that's what turned the series. If you have this series back, I agree with your point earlier. This might be a 7-game series. You could break it down every way possible, but the emotions coming off that Winnipeg series were voided with Nichushkin's exit.
Yeah, that was rough. And I just don't think the defense was up to par in the playoffs for the Avs. They kind of struggled, and Georgiev kind of bailed them out a few times, which was odd because he had a very up and down season. It's going to be a lot of eyes on him this year, man, to see what he can do. And not only him, his backup in Justus Annunen. Like they really haven't had a true backup in a couple years now, since Francouz retired. So he's got to be a solid backup. Georgiev's really got to stand up. The defense has to improve depth wise. I think that could be hit or miss with them right now. I like it, but it's one of those things like where that's what the Avalanche are doing right now, is just plugging the holes. You have your top guy signed.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. And then every offseason it's going to be, plugging those depth holes. Do those moves pan out? Remains to be seen. We'll find out one in tomorrow.
They were pretty busy at the trade deadline last year. You see that sort of kind of happening again, possibly, or with this influx of young talent. You think maybe they just sort of let it ride? Of course, you can never have too much depth. They'll probably go out and add somebody, but do you think these young guys that are coming up that you've mentioned, the handful, like they're going to have to sort of step up and play some big minutes this season?
Well, the moves last year that were made at the trade deadline were because the pieces they picked up to plug the holes did not work with Ryan Johansson. Like they got rid of Bowen Byram.
Yeah.
They had to make some moves to make that team competitive for the playoffs that we mentioned earlier that everybody points to. The Avs were preparing for the playoffs. Yeah. This year, with plugging the holes, you also have to take into account the Landeskog and Nichushkin and possibly Lehkonen, how everybody returns to the ice and win, and what you have to do to, again, be a competitive team in the playoffs. So it's going to be, honestly, like we mentioned, the 10-by-10 game stretches. Yeah. That's how this team's going to be evaluated all year long. And how active they will be at the trade deadline depends on how this team is reacting in those stretches.
100%.
Yeah. And I mean, if you get those guys back, that's like your own little mini trade deadline for yourself. And that's and you don't have to worry about it at that point. Yeah. It's just cap space, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. And if worst case scenario, Lehkonen, or not Lehkonen, Landeskog. What's that?
Lehkonen just go.
Oh, he's awesome. But if Landeskog can't do it, if he goes out there and he tries, worst case scenario, you've got to put him on LTIR. That frees up stuff, obviously, for trade deadline. So it's a really good question. It's very difficult to answer because you don't know what is going to come back. You don't know how the young guys are going to pan out. And like Kyle said, if they do, your trade deadline is a lot different than if they don't. So we will see. It's going to be a fun, interesting season for the Avs for sure. So
absolutely. Yeah. I think Stars and Avs, man, they're going to be battling out again.
I think so.
Central. It just feels that way.
And like I said, heading into the last break, we did our predictions.
Okay.
You said you did yours. I didn't listen to your show. So are you going? Are you the type that you're putting the Stars in, or do you feel like if you did, you're going to jinx them?
No, so last season, I made the prediction that they were going to get to the Western Conference Final. That was my prediction. I didn't have the cojones to do it any further than that. This year, I went out and I said they're going to win the Stanley Cup this year. I'm going for it. That's my prediction. I think they repeat as Central champs. I think they'll do that. I think Edmonton wins the West. I don't think they win the West again this season, the regular season. But yeah, I'm just going to go on a limb. I think Dallas has it this year. They have the makeup of a Stanley Cup champion. They've gone through the heartbreak, which some teams you kind of have to do, and the Avs sort of went through that. Yep. The Stars were doing it at different stages, but I feel like, you get Sagan and Ben, like maybe one last hurrah, and then it's this new era again. And the good thing with the Stars is you feel like you're almost just at the beginning of sort of this window, even with these veterans that are leaving. But I think the Stars just have a really good makeup, and they've lost some pieces. Tanev, of course, hurt, and Pavelski, but Bork's going to make up for that, and Stanky a full season of him. So that's my prediction. Curious where you guys go. New York and Edmonton seems to be the popular pick. That's the only two teams I see everywhere.
Yeah, New York is mine.
Okay.
Who did you pick? Who Dallas would be playing?
I did New York, actually.
You did New York. Okay, my final is the Canucks and the Rangers.
I love that one. Yeah.
And it's odd because Kyle and I, not planned, our Stanley Cup final picks are past Stanley Cup finals. I went with obviously Vancouver and the Rangers. I have the Rangers winning the entire thing, and Kyle,
I have the Avs taking on the New Jersey Devils, and the Avs will be victorious.
Yes,
so he went there.
There you go.
And I feel like the Devils are a hot pick this year.
Yeah, they have been. I guess just after having like a really disappointing year, people just think they're going to pop all of a sudden. Which I mean, hey, it can happen.
They were 2-0 for like a week.
Yeah. Against the Sabres, man. Big wins over there in Prague.
Oh yeah. Over on ESPN, I wanted to bring this up. They all of those. It's so funny. Like they had all of their hockey people pick, the division winners.
Okay.
And there's like 21 people here. I'm like, when do I see 21 people talking about hockey on ESPN?
Yeah, that's actually
never happens.
Yeah, that's impressive. Well, do they throw the analysts in there?
There's a lot of people. Yes, I mean, Mark Ness stays in here.
So maybe. Okay.
So I get that, but crazy. Anyway, for the Central, 18 of these people picked the Stars.
Okay.
4 picked the Avalanche, and 1 picked Nashville.
Okay.
That's just to win the division. So I can't disagree with I think there's so many questions surrounding the Avalanche. It's tough to pick them to win the division because you have a team like the Stars that are pretty well, and you even talk about your goalie. Who's world.
He should be pretty good.
Yeah, I think he's okay. So I think it's pretty safe to say like Dallas should be in the front seat to win that division. I think they'll get pushed. I mean, it's hockey. It's a hockey season. They're going to get pushed. I don't think they'll run away with it. But if the questions that go the Avalanche way are in their favor, they'll push them even more. If they're not, they might slide down to third again. You might get pushed by Nashville. But I think Dallas is kind of in the driver's seat here.
Yeah, I mean, the Stars will have a slump at some point. Every team does. And it's hard to run away in the Central. And it feels like you can have a 3-game win streak and you don't make up any ground, and then you lose one, and it feels like everybody's like all of a sudden right on your tail once again. Yep. I think that's just sort of the story with the Central, and and maybe Nashville, they just got some energy and the pushing maybe the Avs too, kind of for that 2-3 spot. The playoff format, I don't like it. I wish. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Anyways, not to get into that at all, but I think Dallas has to feel pretty good, and one of the reasons I almost feel good about the Stars pick in a lot of way. My prediction is I feel like last few years the Stars were sort of a popular choice, especially in the playoffs. I felt like a lot of teams were on the Stars last year. It seems like maybe some of the eyes are off of them now. It's all on Edmonton after what they did. So maybe that helps. Stars can maybe fly under the radar a little bit more. Not that, I mean, they always do. I mean, since we're in Texas, but now it's even more. We're back where we like to be.
No, it's a good point. Good point.
It's hard to go wire to wire as a favorite, especially in this league. Like even the Boston Bruins setting a record for the best regular season faltered in the playoffs. So it's one thing to have a successful regular season campaign, but to carry it in the playoffs. And I'd like to see what the Stars could do with that added pressure, because it's been about like 20 years since you've been getting this kind of clout around the Dallas Stars. So keep Matt Duchene away from us.
Yeah, and I mean, last season especially, there was a lot of that like comparison to the 99 Stars. Like you start thinking back, like, oh well, this team has some similarities with the players, and they seem to embrace it, which is a good sign. They don't shy away from it, and I think that has to do with last year. I mean, the Stars had like 4 captains in their building. When you think of like Suter, like he was a captain someplace. Pavelski was a captain. I mean, Sagan, a lot of other places probably would have been up there. Not when he was younger, but he spent so much time in Dallas. And then Jamie Benn, like there's so many leaders there. And those are huge, I think, in the locker room. And I think it's also helping the Stars' young players like Stankoven and Johnston, like when they sort of usher in this new era. So, I mean, we all come back down to like, okay, like what is it going to be in April? Like, is Otter going to show up? Can he have one of those runs again? And can the offense, figure it out for more than 2.5 series? The kind of the Achilles heel, like, has been, of course, there's been some injuries, but every team gets injuries in the playoffs. But the offense is really, really fluttered. We saw it against Edmonton. We saw it against Vegas. Like they run out of goals. So
special teams hurt too.
Yes. Yeah. I think I looked at this after the Stars lost, but under Pete DeBoer, his previous stops, like special teams, like goes out the window, like the further they get into the playoffs. So hopefully that's not a trend that continues.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't, and especially where Pete DeBoer's been. I mean, San Jose had some good talent. I mean, Dallas has. I mean, you pick and choose who you want to play on your power play. So what's going on there? Is it coaching, or is it like? I hate to be like, well, the players just got to be better, like obviously, but special teams is huge. Playoff, I mean, God, it just changes the momentum constantly, especially nowadays with the modern era. It's just penalties wazoo. You have to be able to score.
That's an odd trend that you don't want to continue. That's a weird one. I can't figure that one out.
And especially when they dominated series previously. And then just like even the PK just like seems to not work. I mean, you go up against Connor McDavid like that.
It's gonna
you're gonna give up some. But
wow, that's true.
No, but it's a trend that it's like it just disappears. So hopefully they figure it out.
All right, man. Well, let's wrap this thing up, and I'm sure we will be chatting once or twice during this regular season. So it's a hockey season. It's sure to be a good one. So throw out where people can follow you, the show, anywhere else on social media.
Absolutely. I'm at Joey the Jet 19 on Twitter. You can see us on Locked On Stars, of course, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And I look forward to catching up with you guys again. Maybe we'll have to do it here in a month before the first matchup. Maybe it'll be a battle for first place early on in the season. And Thanksgiving's always a that big kind of deadline, right? Like, are you in the postseason? And I think I hope the Stars and Avs are going to be fine at that point in the season. You never know. Right. Hopefully no surprise firings or something.
All right. And if you want to follow us over on Twitter, X, whatever it is now, LOPN_Avalanche. And that's also Locked On Avalanche on Instagram as well. Kyle, where people can follow you?
At Shaggy Von Doom.
There you go. So, all right. Enjoy these games. Enjoy the season. Joey, appreciate you jumping on here with us. Like we said, we'll definitely be doing this throughout the year. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. For Mr. Shaggy Von Doom and Mr. Joey Erickson, I am Chris Maselli. This is Locked On Avalanche and Locked On Stars. Enjoy the games, everybody.